The term spoiled rotten is typically overheard at children's birthdays or when you're cleaning out the fridge.
I've eaten stranger things in my life, but it's hard to remember one right now.
Oh, yeah, that's hard. With some foods, spoilage is a good thing.
It smells like a dead animal.
In fact, fermentation works wonders.
It is a magical elixir.
Preserving foods, altering chemistry, blooming bacteria, creating new flavors.
Dawned on us that we had never heard anybody ever doing this.
Spoiled rotten doesn't sound so awful now, does it? I'm Andrew Zimmer.
This, with all due respect, is one of the craziest things that I've ever eaten.
And this is Bizarre Food. For the entirety of human history, we've been making food taste better and last longer by letting it spoil. The most typical and fashionable rotting occurs during fermentation, when microorganisms turn sugar into acids and create tasty glutamates. To our ancient ancestors, the transformation was magical, a gift of the gods. Think of cheese or yogurt, beer or wine. That same DIY vibe is coming back today. For all the hammy pork geeks out there worshiping at the altar of jamon iberico and prosciutto di Parma, I give you a taste from the edge of the North Atlantic, Sharpershoot. For as long as humans have inhabited the Faroe Islands, they've relied on sheep for clothing, blankets, and food. No animal is more central to the Faroese way of life. If you need a hand with that, let me know. That's why at the tail end of summer, the best cuts are hung to dry, ferment, and decay for 6 months or more.
Oh, beautiful color.
It is so exquisite. It's so mild. Few tastes are as iconically Faroese as Sharpershoot. It's the prosciutto of the Faroe Islands. Quick, somebody go warm up my car. Bara Johansson and her husband Janusz have been producing it their entire lives.
It's like rose petals.
Sheep here have always outnumbered people 2 to 1. The problem was finding ways to preserve the meat after slaughtering. In a climate too cool to evaporate seawater for salt, too windy for trees to grow and make firewood, salting and smoking were often impossible. What was possible was hanging raw sides of lamb in a shed and letting time and wind work their magic. There's no salt, there's no smoke, there's nothing.
Only the Faroese air.
Right. It's that Faroese air, thick with salt from the sea, rarely exceeding 45 degrees, humid but not too damp, that creates one of the most unique curing conditions on Earth. With time, the meat softens and matures. It dries, and the good bacteria consumes the bad. And an unmistakable decay begins to produce a flavor people 1,000 years ago would recognize. But then at the end, there is a very mild, cheesy finish because of the fermented meat. Comes out through your nose like a very mild cheese. This smells a little funky.
Starts to get green down here.
Ooh. When it's green, it's good.
Yep.
Yeah.
Green is a good color.
I was kidding. In the far north, where warm weather sometimes only lasts a few months, the first peoples became masters of preserving food. It's what kept them fed through the worst of winter. On a sunny summer day in Alaska, it's easy to forget how long and unforgiving the winter will be. The people who live here can't afford to forget. In the village of Kennick, summer is all about preparing food for winter. Most of the truly unique food you find here has been pickled, smoked, spoiled, or buried to make it last through the long, cold winters. At the community smokehouse, Anthony Gastelum dries and smokes fish. some, like the brined king salmon, is wonderfully familiar.
I've eaten smoked fish my whole life. I'm a Jewish kid from New York. I mean, I could swim in this flavor. This is extraordinary. Not too salty, not too sweet. Gorgeous. Salmon flavor.
What are these?
These are hooligans. These come from the Seine River. Hooligans are smelt, very rich in oil, preserved by smoking them. Crispy smoked.
Very crispy.
To keep the full food value, Anthony doesn't gut them. This is the whole fish.
The middle has the biggest part of the fillet. Also has the most guts. And it's actually the sweetest part of it. It's almost sweet like graham crackers. It's got that sweet nut flavor.
This is Ruth.
Hello, Ruth. You heard there was a rooster?
Yes. They were trying all kinds of foods. I brought some for you to try.
Ooh. Ruth calls this Indian cheese.
Wow, it stands up all by itself.
Yeah.
It's another method for preserving food. Salmon eggs, brined in salt and sugar, then smoked.
I eat the whole thing. That salty, funky, strong aftertaste, sticky from all the water that went out of the eggs from the salting and the smoking. Oh! And then bang, you get that little bitter punch at the end.
At the end, yeah.
In less than an hour, I've made 2 first-time discoveries. Here's a third, more salmon eggs, but these are preserved by letting them spoil completely. I'm about to discover just how richly they deserve the name stink eggs. Ann Jackson has lived in Cape for 48 years. In the generations before selling processed salmon roe became big business, stink eggs were a prized treat during the long, dark winters.
You're going to start it out from the raw eggs.
We start by rinsing the salmon roe. When the roe is rinsed clean, we add in some cooked salmon eggs to give the dish variety of flavor and texture. You pour it into a jar, add a small handful of salt,
Dip your water.
add water, and seal.
Now you're going to shake it a little bit. Shake it like that, up and down, up and down. And that distributes the salt with the water. Okay, that's enough. And then it's going to set for 7 to 10 days.
And the eggs will end up looking like this.
That is awesome.
That's what I and the elders are here to eat. As for the stink eggs,
That's a rather strong smell.
well, for some things, there are simply no words.
It is a part of the fish that you just would never want to let spoil. There's a handful of foods in the world that smell like this. Funazushi in Japan, I've eaten it. Hakarl in Iceland, eaten it. I think this beats them both for aroma and oomph. This, with all due respect, is one of the craziest things that I've ever eaten. And it was almost impossible for me to get in my mouth. It smelled so strong.
I disagree with you. You eat bugs.
That's a swift kick in the rear.
Okay. That's a delicacy.
You know what that's code for? When someone says you, oh, that's a delicacy, that means you should like it more. That's what it's code for. Foods that were once fermented solely as a necessary means of survival have become popular as delicacies amongst the lotus eaters looking for the next thing in cuisine. So this is 3-year-old fish. People
seek it out in popular modern restaurants, and even the most potent kinds are proudly offered at special family get-togethers.
I think I can. I think I can. I think I can. I think I can. Oh my God.
The world of food evolves according to its own theory of natural selection. The technique for fermenting food begins as an adaptation for survival and gradually becomes wildly popular amongst people with no idea that it was ever a grim necessity. Fermentation truly knew no bounds at Tohyang, a 24-seat Korean-American restaurant in San Francisco's Richmond district that sadly recently closed. Its proprietor, Hwa Soon Im, is a master of traditional fermenting methods that can take years, sometimes decades, to achieve optimal taste. The fermented bean paste soup is a standard for me, but Im always has a surprise for me.
Wow. I've never had fermented sea urchin before.
Okay.
Im's talents can transform food that even her own daughter is reluctant to try, like fermented sea urchin.
I'm not a big fan of uni, regularly.
Well, maybe you'll like this because it's so different. It's just so tannic. That sea urchin is so briny and so aggressively strong, the back of your mouth almost clenches up.
The controlled spoilage is happening in a small yard behind the restaurant. The soy sauce has been out here for 5 years.
Oh my gosh,
We use it for that.
It's strong.
It is very
No
strong.
joke.
No, it's very
But
intense.
it's so clean. And it's not dark.
It's a lot lighter in color, but it definitely has a lot of flavor to it.
That's amazing.
The fish sauce has been here for 3 years. So this is 3-year-old fish.
맛있다. That's a very strong fermented
Very strong.
3-year-old fish.
Yeah.
One cornerstone of Korean cooking is fermented bean paste. Im makes hers at home on her kitchen floor. It's a surprisingly simple process, but like winemaking, it takes years to master. It begins with mashing together soybeans, salt, and fermented flour.
When she was young, she was always told that all a woman needed was to be a good cook in the kitchen.
Right.
Then, she would get a good husband.
Im packs most of her mashed paste into clay pots she keeps in her backyard. Every year of fermentation adds new complexity to the flavors. This one she made when she first arrived in America. It's been here for 32 years.
How often does she crack into that batch?
우리가 먹진 않잖아, 자주.
그래서 요만큼 내려간 거야.
Uses it for special occasions.
All right. So just take a bite with the chili?
Go ahead. 그럼 맵지 않아요, 고추? I asked her if it was spicy, and she's like, I don't know. It's got a kick. Oh, it's spicy.
Up until about 30 seconds ago, I thought I was an honored guest. Now I realize I'm just a victim. Wow. The 10-year-old batch is a completely different experience.
Salty, the fermented flavor is extraordinary. Much bigger than, brighter than the 30-year-old.
This batch is only 1-year-old.
이건 아직 저기가 안 돼서 포석포석하잖아.
So
Oh,
you
yeah.
can see the texture is not as
Much different.
sticky. Yeah.
It's chalkier.
Yeah.
It tastes more of soybean.
되게 오래돼서 맛있는 거.
It's almost like wine that hasn't quite become wine yet.
Right.
Delicious, though.
Primitive methods of fermenting and preserving food have evolved into highly skilled works of art. In the Moroccan city of Fez, a meal made with spoiled camel meat and rancid goat butter is a family favorite. My friends at the U.S. Embassy asked their major domo, Mr. Rodati, to take me to the market. This is smen. It's cultured, turned butter made from the milk of goats.
Smells like a dead animal.
Most smen ages for up to a year. This is the cream of the crop, aged for over 3 years. And this is how you taste it.
Underneath the tongue?
If it stings, that means it's just cultured, aged, and spoiled enough to be used as a flavoring agent in hundreds of Moroccan dishes.
It's very clean, it's very fatty, it fills up your whole mouth with flavor and it comes through your nose. This is incredible, very, very high quality.
And this stuff smells like a whole army of dead animals. It's called kalia, one of my least favorite foods in the world. It's meat, in this case camel, that's cooked in its own fat, then left to age for up to a year. So it's basically preserved, spoiled meat. And tonight, it's what's for dinner.
All right, thank you.
We're eating in a 13th century palace owned by the Rodati family. It's a fixer-upper for sure. Mr. Rodati's cousin, Hanan, lives there and is cooking us the kalia. That years-old mix of meat and fat, it's the evil spawn of confit and beef jerky. Now, it's sautéed in olive oil with fresh market eggs and a little smen. I'm feeling an unhappy sense of déjà vu.
I've only tried this one other time. And did you see the Marrakesh show?
Yes, I did.
My run-in with kalia was not good. I think I can. Oh my God.
Not good being quite an understatement. But I'm willing to try it again because you never know.
I can eat it. It's just the texture and the saltiness. I don't know. It's not my thing. So you bite down on a piece of it, and out gushes this
Salty juice and very weird juice. That's
weird juice. And weird juice, you just need to get used to it. This is one of those foods I'm just not into. But I love the fact that you love it. You're mad at me, aren't you?
yeah. No, I'm not.
Not mad, just disappointed. Kalia is Morocco's national dish and a subject of great pride for most hosts.
I ate my first bite, and it was fine. You're really ticked off. I feel terrible.
Every kid knows when someone says, eat this, it's good for you, brace yourself.
When it tastes this awful, I think it's got some curative powers.
The story of eating fermented foods includes many thousands of unsung heroes. I'm talking about the generations of people who learned the hard way exactly how long certain foods should spoil to get the best results. About an hour south of Taipei is Wulai, one of the country's national treasures. This area was settled by Aboriginal tribes centuries ago, and today the Dayan tribe continues to influence the local culture and food scene. Tayabobo serves an entirely Aboriginal menu.
Can you help me order?
Okay, so sorry.
All right, this should be interesting. You tell me what to have.
Now, keep in mind that Aboriginal food is generally culled from nature, so whatever grows or flies in the area is fair game.
Hi, welcome to Taiwan.
Oh, thank you.
Chun Jun Lin is part of the family here at Tayabobo's, and she's introducing me to a house specialty, a dish they call dama noodles or dama mein. But this stuff isn't noodles at all.
What is this?
It's a kind of meat, just original meat.
Aboriginal meat?
Original meat, yes. From a long time ago, we have no refrigerator. and we keep meat, mix the salt, and keep in the bottle.
Looking around, I noticed that the restaurant is decorated with dozens of jars, all with dates written on them. To make dama, rice and pork are mixed together with salt and then put into a jar to ferment. To serve dama main, it's pulled from the jar and placed on a plate with ice. But how long does it sit on the shelf?
Just 2 weeks.
Just 2 weeks.
Yeah.
So this is 2-week-old cured raw pork.
You are correct.
All right, I'll go with it. I've eaten stranger things in my life, but it's hard to remember one right now. All right, here it goes.
Yeah.
Fermented, 2-week-old salted pork. Damamet.
Yes.
Damamet.
Yes. Like sashimi, right?
Oh, yeah. This tastes exactly like paper-thin beef squirted with lemon juice. This is amazing. The salt and the rice and the pork transforms itself. It's so putrid that it's gone completely sour. This is like the sauerkraut of pork. That's what this is. The other thing I like about this, it's very cooling because of the ice. Refreshing.
Yeah.
I love that. Generations of experimenting with controlled spoilage has done more than allow us to eat spoiled food in safety. It's also medicinal. This is La Parada, a street market in Lima, Peru. La Parada can offer a window into an ancient mountain culture. Takosh is an Andean staple, sold powdered, stewed, or raw. These small little red potatoes are left to rot. This is like potato cheese, and they're all mounted together and made into a tube and stuffed down and transported. The smell, it's like dead things. But over there, 5 feet away, is a lady who takes these and creates a healthy tonic for you. Can I try a bowl? These are those same rotten potatoes cooked down to distill their essence and seasoned with a little sugar. What makes it so goopy is all of that rotten potato starch. Wow, sour putrid jello. And if it doesn't taste like medicine, for some reason, I don't think it's going to make me better. But when it tastes this awful, I think it's got some curative powers. It has unique molds and chemistry that have healing effects. I really believe that. Food is consumed around the world as medicine, and much of it has legit curative powers. Occasionally, consuming them has side effects that are tougher to handle than the ailment they're trying to alleviate. In the village of Miloli'i, on the big island of Hawaii, there are people still drinking fermented noni juice. Really? Oh. Noni has the nickname starvation fruit because in olden days, islanders would eat it when there was no other food to be had. So this one's ready.
That one's ready.
It doesn't smell, but the stench around the tree from the dropped rotting fruit is pretty severe.
It is.
Nobody is starving here at the home of Anita Calpico. Her husband Willie and son Kaimi are fishermen who always bring home a catch. She grows and harvests noni to make a health drink out of the juice.
Yes, I do. It cleanses you. You take it when you meditate and you want to fast, maybe, and kind of slow down.
It's a really potent smell when it's rotting on the ground, and there's lots of, it drops.
Yeah.
That rotting, stinking fruit is a preview of things to come. Anita will rinse our harvest and put the fruit in jars to let it spoil. The juice begins weeping from the fruit, oozing out as it's decomposing. And look, you've even marked the date on it. So this is just a few days.
Yeah,
it's turned into this.
Yeah, it only takes a couple days.
Some people believe drinking noni juice helps cleanse the body and the soul. Others believe it can cure dangerous diseases. The one undisputed side effect is that it'll flush your system faster than you can ask where the toilet is. I want to taste what it's like, but I'm not going to drink it because the idea of spending the rest of the day on the toilet is not thrilling.
That's right, yeah.
For me, and that is what would happen.
It would happen. Yeah, maybe.
Yeah, that's horrible. It does have. It's a little bit bitter. Mm-hmm. It has a very cheesy aroma. You couldn't pay me enough to do what you just did. No question. Sometimes you need to have grown up on something to appreciate it fully. When someone gets too nostalgic for the stuff that Mom once made, I get a little scared. Oh, man. You do have to be brought up on that. The world's most beloved foods are the ones that taste like home. In cultures where preserving food was once crucial for survival, families have been passing along centuries' worth of experience with fermentation. Evelyn Beater and Agnes Denny are sisters living in Alaska's Copper River Valley. That's where their mother taught them the skills of dog sledding and how to get the winter's food in the house before the big snows come. Feeding, training, and caring for the dogs is just half the work of getting ready for winter mushing season. You have to prepare food for the people who will be out there with them. Foods need to be harvested now and preserved for later. Denesse is a tiny red jewel of a berry that's foraged in the woods. In late fall, large bunches are preserved in a glaze of liquid hot moose fat that coats and congeals on the berries as it cools.
It looks like white chocolate, doesn't it?
Wow, you paint such a lovely picture. In theory, the congealed moose fat should sweeten and tenderize the berries that ordinarily have a medicinal taste and a chalky texture. Oh, that's not the most pleasant tasting thing.
Really?
In the world. Yeah. Do you think I
like it. Yeah, it's good.
I like it, too.
Fat and a chalky berry. I've got a funky vibe. And you know I love moose fat. It's like a little superfood.
A little energy bar, yeah.
Yeah. The woods provide berries. The Copper River, behind the house, provides salmon. The June to August salmon run provides a harvest that lasts all winter.
I try to fill my smokehouse at least 4 times.
4 times.
4 times. That'll get me through the winter.
Light, portable, dried strips like these are essential eating on hunting and mushing trips in these parts.
That's so good.
But locals prefer them with a little added kick.
Oh, wow. You won't even touch it.
This is oil, derived entirely from fermented salmon heads. In summer, the heads are deposited in the creek for some controlled spoilage. That's how you make steak heads, which I've tasted before on a visit to a Native American community along the Alaskan coast. Oh, man! But I've never seen anyone boil them down into concentrated, decomposed salmon jet fuel like this.
Just don't eat the whole thing.
No. Used as a dip for the smoked salmon, this is an uber health food. The fermented solids in the oil itself actually raise your body temperature as well, and you don't need much. Oh, man, oh, man. That's very, very strong. You do have to be brought up on that. That's
This is fresh. This isn't strong yet.
Really?
Yeah.
It gets
It
stronger?
gets stronger, yeah.
But it's the fact that it came from the rotted heads. That stink is part of the essence of it.
Yeah.
In a community where everything is shared, I'm thrilled to be able to try this with you because it connects a circle, but I'm not going to have any more.
Okay.
So my gift to you is more of that. And you know how much I love your food. Thank you. Indeed. Thank you. I'm going to drink more tea. Try to get the flavor of that stuff out of my cheeks. When people are able to dedicate themselves to honoring their mother's cooking for both love and money, the results can be inspired. The old Pfizer factory in Brooklyn is now used as an incubator for new businesses, many of them food-related. This is where Kadimo makes kimchi the way his mom did it when he was growing up. His brand is called, you guessed it, Mama O's. So now tell me about your mom and her kimchi.
The thing, what really inspired me is that all the stuff in the stores was just so bad.
Yeah.
And I was really fortunate that my mom made good kimchi, and so I just started making it for myself.
Now, Kadim supplies Mama O's to chain groceries as far away as Wisconsin. He breaks down the heads of cabbage, brines the leaves in salt water, rinses 3 times to take out most of the salt, and adds onion and cilantro. Then it's ready for the kimchi paste. You can taste the garlic, ginger, salt, sugar, lime, and chilies. How hot is your paste? What are you using? What kind of chili?
This is just the regular Korean chili peppers.
Right,
But
get
then,
them in bags.
Yeah. But then I do a super spicy version with the ghost pepper.
The ghost pepper is hot enough to peel paint off the wall.
Let me get these masks because it's once it gets in the air.
No. It's
perfect. Let me get this fine.
strap me in.
This means we're going steady. Ready? Mm-hmm. You can almost kind of smell it. Mm-hmm. It's out there.
All right, that's mixed very carefully.
Looking good.
The tubs of kimchi with their different flavored pastes ferment for 2 days on these shelves until they're ready to be shipped. This is a finished version of Kadim's super spicy ghost pepper kimchi. Still getting warmer. Beautiful. You taste all the kimchi stuff and it's warm, and then it finishes. Man, that's delicious. Thank you. It's great kimchi.
Gotta make Mama proud. It's her name on it.
Traditional cultures have been making fermented food forever. Literally. Today's countercultural culinary rebels are now embracing it as a do-it-yourself recipe for New Age wellness.
Which is alive.
Can it hear me?
Yes,
right now? I'm really anxious to try you. Oh my goodness. Fermentation is humanity's second oldest method of cooking preparation after raw foodism. There's some delicious irony that something so ancient should now be the most popular DIY food in America. In Wisconsin, well, they make a lot of cheese there. Bluemont Dairy's Willie Lehner is a hard-working New Age hippie who took his farm off the grid 11 years ago, devoting it to self-sustaining artisanal food production. That means generating his own power, growing his own food, and building his own cheese cave. He dug 30 feet down into the limestone earth and erected a 1,600 square foot cellar. And you got a pretty rockin' cool cave here.
Yeah, the first cheeses went in 2007, so I've been using it for 5 years now.
This underground environment is the ideal place to age cheese. He's also an affineur, a master in the art of aging cheese, a process that's integral to the creation of world-class fromage.
Ah, smell that smell. I love that smell.
This part of the cave houses washed rind cheeses. The humidity stays between 96 and 98%, but it doesn't feel wet because it's a cool 55 degrees. High humidity creates a comfortable place for the bacterial growth, the key to controlled spoilage.
We want those yeast and the bacteria to be very happy, and they want that kind of humidity so that they can grow and then provide the cheese a lot of flavor.
Right. I mean, all this stuff is alive.
Totally alive.
We're not alone here.
Every single piece of cheese in this room is just a multitude of organisms growing on the cheese, some that we don't even know about yet.
I love that.
Yeah. So why don't we just take this guy here.
This is cheese made from sheep's milk, harvested from a flock that's 99% grass-fed.
Well, that's extraordinary. The rind on it has a really noble funk. Is the only way to describe it. Just has a great grass flavor. It's rich, and then it's not rich. It's got a wonderful dance across the mouth.
So this is what sheep's milk can do. Now, I'll show you what pasture-grazed cow's milk can become.
Wow, this is a whole new smell.
Yeah. Because it's not bacteria influencing this cheese, it's mold. The wheels are wrapped in a thick muslin cloth. That's actually what the mold grows on. And the cloth helps to slow, but not stop, the influx of cheese mites.
I think it's a very natural part of maturing cheese. They give off enzymes, which is cheese mite dung, right?
Yes.
And they give flavor.
Why is it that I like all the cheeses that have little bugs that take craps in it?
Try that.
It's like toast, toffee. It's almost a caramely toffee sort of sweetness at times.
And it's clean. I don't detect any off flavors in it.
No, that's pretty good.
Yeah, thanks.
Fermentation of all types has crept into our modern lifestyles. Drink any kombucha lately? This is how they do it in Sedona, Arizona, where some of the natural foods movement gurus have a unique perspective on this stuff.
Okay, we're bringing the kombucha culture. Very stinky and
Oh my God!
good.
Kombucha is a centuries-old health drink. You make it by combining tea with a special culture of bacteria and yeast. The bubbling inside this jar is the bacteria feeding on the tea, and the thick, foul-smelling stuff on top is what the bacteria grows into. This really does smell like something died.
Really does.
Drinking kombucha is said to do anything from boosting the immune system to preventing cancer. Originally from Asia, it's become increasingly popular in the West. But at Delish, it's handcrafted by this man. Philip Gravengard, who's made a lifestyle out of eating food that's uncooked, fermented, and as he puts it, alive.
And that's the thing about kombucha, was so different. It's alive. Most things are dead that we're putting in our bodies. Kombucha is alive. So it promotes life.
Because he treats food as a living thing, Ilip has a relationship with food that's, well, unique.
So it's the holy kombucha.
Yeah.
And it says, I love you, because we need to let food know that we love it.
I'm really anxious to try you. This right here, and I don't want to stir it up or anything, but you can see the fermentation on the side of there. This jar is like a farm growing the bacteria to use for kombucha making. That same bacteria is growing inside this jar. It just hasn't reached the point where you can see it forming on top. This looks really, really good.
Yes, it is a magical elixir, and it's a magical elixir from Sedona. This is a prickly pear. Sedona, so it's the prickly pear fruit. Yes, absolutely.
The prickly pear gives this drink an inviting color, but this is still a glass full of bacteria culture. This is like the best iced tea you've ever had with a little bit of vinegar, just to balance it out, which is extraordinary. Extraordinary. After that delightful surprise, I'd sort of like to quit while I'm ahead, but Ilip's not finished.
So this one will be a little bit stronger.
Did you hear that?
Yeah. See, that one was speaking to you.
Yeah. All right. It was. This is what Ilip calls holy kombucha, made with Thai basil and the blend of half a dozen different kinds of tea. Ooh. Thinner, tartar. This is almost like a fabulous sour apple juice. It really fantastic sour fruit finish to it. So don't let it smell scary. In the right hands, kombucha can be delicious. I like these both. This is a 10, this is an 11. When we visited Sedona 7 years ago, kombucha was a fringe phenomenon. Now, it's mainstream. There's a Brooklyn company marketing kombucha, making kits, and turning the oldest bacteria colonies into a new food experience. Every one of these jars is a bacteria nursery, growing the live organisms for making your own kombucha. It's smoky, then a little bit of tartness, and then finishes sweet. Eric Childs is the founder of Kombucha Brooklyn. They make do-it-yourself homebrew kombucha kits. And while popularity of the tea has soared across the U.S., it's the byproduct of the kombucha process that's fueling Eric's interest. SCOBY is the acronym for Symbiotic Culture of Bacteria and Yeast.
See little mama down there?
Yeah.
Mama produces baby.
Yeah.
At the end of the week, we steal baby. We pack up baby, we ship it off to you in your home.
The SCOBYs they're mailing out will reproduce 3 times. At that point, it's swollen to frisbee size and usually ends up in a compost pile, if not the trash. Believe it or not, that massive disk of bacteria has enormous edible potential. These are cold SCOBY noodles in miso soup.
All right, so you got a vegan dashi, you got red bean miso, shiitake mushrooms, a little tofu, and now you're adding living, not heated, SCOBY noodles. What do you think?
The miso and the SCOBY just works beautifully together. This is the star attraction.
So this is my favorite recipe. These are the SCOBY Rancher snacks. Preserved with the sugar, the acidity level, cinnamon, allspice, marinated with kombucha and the SCOBY, and then dehydrated overnight.
Genius application. The tart and the sweet there, the marination is nice. I mean, this has fantastic promise. This is a Sour Patch Kid au naturel.
Yeah.
Wow. People are always finding new ways to ferment and age foods, creating new flavors our ancestors never imagined. This is glorious. Fermenting food as an official passion first began when people saw nature transforming food into something new. Think of a grape drying on the vine into a raisin. In the 21st century, there are people using the same ancient mindset to create something entirely new that's never existed in nature before. This may look like a bowl of rice, but as they say in sci-fi flicks, it's alive. The guys in this Brooklyn lab are growing bacteria by the teeming gajillions in this rice to achieve flavors no one's ever tasted before. This is the latest brainchild of David Chang.
Dawned on us that we had never heard about anybody ever doing this, like ever.
Chang runs a growing empire of 9 restaurants in 3 countries, publishes a slick food quarterly called Lucky Peach, and operates 6 Momofuku Milk Bar bakery shops. David's assembled a team to apply ancient fermentation techniques to create entirely new ingredients with familiar and popular flavors.
It got to a point where, with all the restaurants growing, that we needed to sort of have a centralized idea. And I didn't want to make recipes for each restaurant. I wanted to create the ideas where people would want to take the ideas to their restaurants. So that was why the lab started.
The first idea was simple. Why not make their own miso and their own soy sauce using American ingredients and recipes that were both Asian and not Asian? Simple means no fancy high-tech gear, just thousands of hours experimenting with an infinite variety of rotting grains. Led by product development chef Ryan Miller, the creative team is coming up with new versions of classic ingredients created out of those armies of rice-bound, sugar-eating bacteria. Here's how it works. First, add fungus to a batch of steaming rice. Basmati, in this case, chosen after months of trial and error. Stored at high heat and humidity, the fungus will go to work, eating up the starch and changing the rice's flavor and consistency. After 36 hours, you get something that's not quite basmati rice anymore. It's very sweet up front, it's nutty in the middle like I expect a grain to be, and there's a little bit of that sourness on the back end.
And you just don't expect to get a flavor like that.
Oh my God. And that's literally just the starter. Now they add that living mass of fermented rice to a batch of cooked and ground chickpeas. At this lab, they're mixing starters with every grain and legume they can get their hands on until they come up with the result they like.
So these two, and then other than that, you need a little bit of salt and just a little bit of water.
A couple cups of water, a couple tablespoons of salt.
Yeah, the salt controls the fermentation by killing off some bad bacteria, slowing the growth of others, while the mix sits in an aging room anywhere from 3 months to a year. What comes out is a dark, chunky paste that's ground smooth between two granite wheels. The result is a new miso-inspired product David calls Hozan, bottled under the label of his Kaizen trading company.
Oh, that's delicious. This is glorious because it has all those beautiful miso properties so folks can relate to something. It's got the salt, it has that fermented starch flavor, right?
If we age it longer and even dehydrate it, I do believe that it begins to start to taste like Parmesan.
Right.
And I mean, the applications obviously are many. I mean, if you can replicate aged dairy flavors in a non-dairy product, just that idea alone.
The cheesecake uses sunflower Hozan cream cheese, so there's no milk fat in this decadent dessert. The Hozan is more than a dairy substitute. It's a whole new food experience.
This is phenomenal. This cheesecake with that Hozan edge to it, the world wants this. Food and fermentation is a never-ending story. The methodology, the fantastic flavors it produces, the ingenuity it inspires allows for endless possibilities, transforming food. It's a tribute to the human spirit and the way we interact with what we eat. So it seems especially true when something is spoiled rotten. If it looks good, eat it.